Welcome to Cars on Call. I am gastroenterologist and automotive journalist Steve Schutz. I'm here with trauma surgeon Stephan Moran, automotive collector, historian, and connoisseur Adams Hudson. We've got a lot to cover today. We got to kind of get through it. But episode 92, we've been going for about a year and a half, having a lot of fun. And again, we got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about, Stephan, you talked about Teslaification about a year and a half ago. You created that word. And let me just say for a second, for our listeners, in case you're new, we're the only show that has a trauma surgeon talking about automotive safety, Stephan Moran. So that's really cool. We're going to talk about Teslaification because you can now buy cars on your Amazon app. And then collector, Adams is going to talk about a huge sale of a Ferrari, big number for a GTO. You're going to talk about that. I want to have a little rant about Stellantis, which I'm pissed off about. Trauma surgeon safety, we're going to get into. And finally, we're going to talk about we have $100,000 to buy a collector car. We've done it with $35,000. We've done it with $50,000. We did it with $80,000. Now we got $100,000. So we're going to talk about that at the end. But guys, let's get into it. And Stephan, Teslaification happens again. Everyone listen to you.
Hey, survey says, the Cox Automotive poll that 81% of customers said online retail services improve the process of purchasing a vehicle. Hello?
I can't believe it's not 100%.
I know. People hate going to the dealer, man. I always hated dealer. I mean, I dragged Ellen pregnant the last day of the month in January when I purchased my Acura Integra back in 1992 because I knew I could get a better deal. And she was about to faint. She was 3 months. I mean, she was like third trimester. She was still, to this day, she's mad at me about that. But hey, I got a great deal in the car. But that's what it takes to get a deal. And, now everybody yelps. And
so it was like last day of the year, like late December, last day of the year type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I wait to the last minute, the last day of the month. They're trying to meet their quota. Well, I mean, it's what I really, because then, it used to be you just dealt with the dealer. And then now you deal with the dealer who then calls in the manager, and then they take you to the finance office where they try to shaft you again. And I talked about how I got shafted by the finance office when I bought my Mustang Bullet. They sold me a feature that the car didn't have. And it took me months to get the money back. I was so pissed off. So anyway,
I'm curious picture you paid for that didn't exist. I know that
they said it had. They said it had one of those GPS anti-theft devices on it. So you could track your car anywhere that it was. It was a subscription service. And I said, take it off the car. I don't want it. They said, we can't take it off. We have to charge you for it. I got home. The car didn't have it. Oh yeah. I was so pissed off.
Now you can get an Apple locator disc for about $50.
But yeah, right. Exactly. Well, this was a Mercedes dealership in Nashville that I bought the car from. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Yeah, well, they were right. They were right. They couldn't take it off.
Because it wasn't there. Anyway, so yeah, people hate going to the dealer. So I coined the word Teslaification because Elon Musk really, first of all, nobody thought he could create a car company. He did. Nobody thought he could create a car company. And if he did, that it would be successful. He did. Nobody thought that he could change the way that people would buy cars. He did. And nobody thought he would change the way that a car is serviced. He did. So he changed all these things, and I call that the Teslaification of the auto industry. And Elon Musk really did it. So as Steve mentioned, Hyundai and Amazon announced on Thursday that U.S. customers can now buy a vehicle online direct to consumer. You whip out your iPhone, and you are going to be able to buy a Hyundai just like you could buy a Tesla. And Tesla has the over-the-air updates. They've got mobile service appointments. I'm sure that Hyundai will move to that next, but that's part of the Teslaification of the auto industry. And the others. Go ahead, Adams.
Are we getting free shipping with that new Hyundai?
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they figure it out. So your choice is to have it delivered to your home or to the dealer. Mm-hmm. But, it's going to be very interesting to see. Dealers just going to have to up the game. I mean, this is the way things are moving. You're going to go on and you're going to order your car because, cars are made with robots now. And, you're going to be able to order your car and, people are going to imagine you get exactly what you want and you're going to wait 3 months, 6 months. You're going to do it. You're going to wait to get exactly what you want. And then, Steve, you waited a long time to get your paint to sample Porsche because you wanted the color. And then there are times you just go to the lot, you buy what's on the lot because part of that's getting just the deal. But I think everybody now wants the best of the best, and they want what they want. And this is, I think it's wonderful. Jim Farley of Ford Chief has called for new regulations. He does not like, he's going up against the NADA, the National Automobile Dealers Association. Yeah, good luck with that. He says that if he could sell vehicles direct to consumers, bypassing the dealers on the sale of the vehicle, it would save him about $2,000 a vehicle. So that means the consumer then saves $2,000 a vehicle. You would take your vehicle for service to the dealer, but Jim Farley's realizing, just like Elon Musk showed, you don't need a dealer to sell a car.
Yeah, but and Adam's way on this because I know a couple prominent dealers, but the reality is there are franchise laws and there are franchise agreements and franchise contracts.
Right.
So Ford is contractually obligated to sell through dealers. Tesla is not, and Hyundai presumably is too. So
how are they getting around? I think Hyundai's getting around it.
Well, I think they're probably not. You probably order it on your phone and it goes through a dealership, through a franchise dealership near you is what I'm thinking. I don't know for sure.
I would think that's the way that works. And of course, Tesla, goes straight from manufacturer to distribution point to consumer. So they do cut out the dealer step completely. And Steve is right. People have contractual obligations in order to even score a franchise. If you want a franchise, you want a Porsche point or, a high traffic car in a low traffic area, you get it, but you have to pay up for it. And they look at your projected sales. Farley I'm sure he's right. I'm sure they've put the numbers on that for the $2,000 savings per, but some of these small towns would just go out of business. I mean, there's a lot of people who are employed by the dealership. A lot of livelihoods depend on dealerships. Of course, the whole UAW, all they worry about is, who's making them. Well, somebody's got to sell them eventually. And if you cut out the dealer body, you cut out a whole lot of people. Back in the dark ages, when I was working at a dealership, the gross on the new cars was about 18 to 22% markup. Now, Porsche would make that look like a joke because they're probably getting 28, maybe even 30% now. And a salesperson back in those days, just call it 20%, they would get 20% of the gross. So you'd get 20% markup. The salesperson get 20% of what he or she sold it for, meaning I knew several six-figure automobile salespeople back in the day. It was unbelievable. And, they would end up spending it. It would be a fancy suit and a fancy watch and fancy shoes, and they were always on the edge, but they could make a pretty good living. Well, now you're looking at razor thin margins. You're looking at maybe double-digit margins on a good day, and the salesperson is usually getting a flat fee per car, and it is painfully low. So
hey, mark my words here. We had a recent a directive in the court system about real estate agents and commissions in this country.
Right.
Yep.
The NADA, this is coming their way. Okay. This whole idea that you've cornered the market, franchise, your lobbyists have cornered in, and basically it's not a free market system anymore. That the automotive industry is about to undercome an abrupt change. And this Teslaification I talk about, what happened with the real estate agents and their commission fixed, everybody gets six. That's going to change. These franchise laws are going to change because this next generation, with the instant gratification like we all have, we get the phone, you get it. Amazon is here tomorrow. Exactly what you want. The car, I want this. Here's how much I'm going to pay. It's going to be here tomorrow because I don't have to go to my dealer. I can get anywhere I want it. I think the dealers are going to have to find a way. How do they stay relevant in this new marketplace? And I think it's going to end up being kind of like a Polestar. You go into Polestar, they got 3 vehicles in there, and then you go home and you order what you want. But they're just there for you to see the product, not to actually buy the product from them. And that salesman doesn't get a direct commission from you.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, honestly, do you really need a real estate agent where you can go on Zillow, you get a video tour
Yes.
of the place, you get it inspected, you know exactly what it looks like, it's been inspected by somebody, you don't have to ever see it, because you've seen it. And, you know, you get the drone footage, stuff like that. And the same thing with Amazon. You click on it, you buy it, it shows up at your house. You don't like it, you send it back. Why not bring that to cars? And of course, that's your whole point about Teslification. So,
Right.
all right, we've got to
All
move
right.
on. But
I got
Adams,
a
tell us.
big win for Hyundai on that. Big win.
Yes.
Yeah, they're the first. They won't be the last.
Yeah.
But Adams, this Ferrari, holy smokes! I'll let you say the number, but big number, famous car. Tell us about it.
Well, the Ferrari GTO, you know, I mean, anybody who wants to look up the definition of there it is, of automotive beauty right there, rolling sculpture, front engine V12 car, Colombo V12 in that car, one of the first after the Lampredi design went away. 39 of these cars made, and you're just looking at, you know, just a masterpiece of automotive history. And they are known, you know, they are like a known quantity. There are not many left floating around in the world. They rarely, if ever, come up at auction. They're mostly privately sold. So when somebody sees one coming up publicly, if you don't know the people who know the people who know the people who may have one, know the person who may have one, you're pretty much relegated to the auction world. This one brought $52 million, 51.7, plus fees, if any. And I say if any, because R.M. Sotheby's has not only been around 300 years for being dumb, they're incredibly shrewd at how to get eyeballs and traffic and viewership. And they may have waived the seller fee on this and a good component of the buyer fee just because of the traffic and the nose and the news and the notoriety of this car. So that one brought, you know, a little under its estimate, if you can believe that, the estimate being at $60 million. And typically, as we were just talking about the buyer and the seller fee among real estate people being shaved and or going away, and it's estimated that'll cut fees about 30% overall. The fees on live auctions, ladies and gentlemen, is generally 10% seller, 10% buyer. Yes.
Wait a minute.
Wow.
Total of 20%.
Wow.
That's
20
ridiculous.
I agree. I agree completely. I have been on the paying side of both, and it just seems egregious, and it kind of is. And in the light of Bring a Trailer et al., those are probably coming down and being shaved and trimmed and negotiated and only being paid one way instead of both ways. It's obscene. And if you figure 20% would be a cool 10 million bucks.
Hey, Adams,
Yes.
Stephan and I have talked about this car in the past, and I want to get your take because I say 52 million seems light because the WeatherTech guy bought one about 5 years ago for 70 million private sale, and that was reported. I don't know for sure that's what it was, but that was a reported figure. This seems a little low as these cars are turning from cars into sculpture, into art. This seems cheap.
Well, and you know, it may be, and at the moment of the hammer falling, so much of that is predicated by its race history, how many times it's changed hands, who owned it. Was it someone prominent, or was it a few unknowns that passed it back and forth? There have been one or two of these with sketchy serial numbers that have sort of been flagrantly and or secretly sort of cast aside in their historical provenance. This one has a very, very, very clean history, about as pristine as you'd want, but not much of a race history. Interestingly enough, the GTO didn't really have a great race history. They're just phenomenal looking, phenomenal sounding, wonderfully rare, beautifully sculpted cars. This one had been owned since 1985. Is that, yeah? Steve, you had mentioned that to me, and the gentleman paid $500,000 in 1985.
Wow, that's a pretty good investment.
Yeah, one would think. You know, I can't calculate the return, but you know, look. So it's not just if you had done that in the stock market, which in the stock market it would have turned into about $6.1 million. If you had done it in the stock market, to get $52 million back off your $500,000 investment, you would be considered some sort of investing savant. But this guy also got to say, I have one of the 39 GTOs ever made. So he got
Yeah,
a little.
yeah, several cool. The 62 GTO that listeners look it up when you get home if you don't know what this car is. This car is so cool that this is Ralph Lauren has one. And if anybody understands design, it's Ralph Lauren. He's got a Bugatti Atlantic, he's got an F1, he's got a Jaguar. He had his car collection at the Boston Museum of Art. They consider his collection so noteworthy. And then Steve-O, our favorite guitarist, and probably yours, Adam, as well, Nick Mason of Pink Floyd.
Drummer.
I'm sorry, drummer.
I know you know that.
I'm thinking Gilmore. I'm sorry, Nick Mason, the drummer of Pink Floyd, owns one of these cars. And yeah, tell us a story about that's a great story, Steve-O.
He used money from Dark Side of the Moon. He's always been a car guy. He grew up a car guy. And in 1977, 4 years after Dark Side of the Moon sold crazy numbers, he bought a GTO because he always wanted one. And he paid a crazy number for it. And everyone criticized him. They said, "You're crazy. It's a 10-year-old used Ferrari. You can get a new Ferrari for $30,000. He paid $64,000 for it. Everyone said he's crazy." And I saw him interviewed recently. And he said, "That's the nature of this car. It doesn't matter when you buy it. People say you're crazy."
Well, brother Nick, and if he could play 2 notes on a guitar, he'd be my favorite guitarist.
Yeah.
He's just
Because of the cars.
He's just a great car dude. But
he's an amazing car dude.
He turned down $30 million in 2013 for the car.
Oh.
He didn't need the money to make his mortgage, but
if I owned one of these, honestly, if I owned a 62 GTO, this would be such a prized collection that of part of my collection. I wouldn't sell it. I don't care. It would, unless I needed the cash. I needed some form of therapy or something. I don't know. But this car is so prized. Maybe owning it and driving it, the love would wear off. But I would build a damn house around this thing, and I just would sit on my couch and look at it every day. This car is just, to me, is automotive sculpture. Sculpture is the most beautiful 2-door coupe ever designed.
Yep, I agree with that. And if you think about the automotive makers who sort of like jumped ship from whoever they'd been employed by, such as Iso, Piero Revolta, Alejandro De Tomaso, who is the gentleman, Frank Reisner, who did the Intermeccanica Italia. Those guys would sort of pop off on their own every now and then. Well, the guy who popped off from this was none other than Giotto Bizzarini. And if you wonder why a Bizzarini is worth about $1 million, it's largely because he designed that car.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. I honestly would not want to own one. And the reason is the cost of insuring it and securing it. It must be so incredibly expensive. You have to have security because no one's going to steal this car and resell it. But what they're going to do is they're going to steal it and get a ransom. The security and the insurance cost. I have no idea how much it costs to insure this car, but it's crazy. Because again, it's like if you have a Picasso or a Rembrandt, the security costs and insurance costs are gigantic. And yeah, on the one hand, it's guaranteed to go up over time. On the other hand, those carrying costs are substantial.
Yeah. And one thing, the Picasso does not hold fuel nor batteries. So it comes with a little premium just because it's a bit of a vulnerable piece of art.
Yeah. Anyway, I think the guy who sold it, bought it for $500,000, sold it for $50 million. He made a good investment, and probably 20 years it'll be worth $200 million. Amazing. So, hey, a little news, and I'm going to make a little bit of a rant, guys, and get your take because I'm a little pissed off about this. The good news is the UAW strike is over. Wages are going to go up about 20% for frontline workers. These guys work in a factory, guys and women work in a factory. It's hard work. They're getting a raise. Fine. I have absolutely no problem. But as a result, fallout of this, one of the Detroit Three had quite a reaction, and it was Stellantis. They said because of that increased cost, plus the increased cost of BEV developments, electric car development costs. They had to cut their salaried workforce. This is where I get pissed off. They hatcheted, axed, whatever fucking word you want to use, half of their North American salaried workers. Translation, this European company, Chrysler used to be American. This European company took all those jobs back to Europe. GM didn't cut it. I think maybe they cut a few salary workers, but very few. Ford, same thing. And in 2009, when Chrysler went bankrupt, they were essentially given to Fiat, and they became Fiat Chrysler. And then that morphed into Stellantis. Peugeot and Citroën bought them, and Opel. And now there's this big conglomerate. And here's why I'm pissed off. They should have, and they were told in 2009, merge Chrysler with GM. And if they had done this, they would have had GM with Jeep and Dodge and Ram. They would have made it all work. They would have saved, I think, a lot of jobs. Certainly, they would have saved jobs compared with what just happened, this bloodbath by Stellantis. I am pissed off that they didn't merge with GM back in 2009 when it was talked about and should have been done. And here we are.
Wow. Did you say like 6,400-ish? Is that what?
6,400 salaried workers were let go, half of their North American workforce.
That's unbelievable. And I think I don't disagree that, if they should have taken the opportunity to do that. But you wonder how deeply steeped the competition, the whole sort of prideful, ego-driven competition of Walter P. Chrysler competing with, Louis Chevrolet back in the day and Henry Ford. Is it just because they didn't want to cave in to GM? We don't know, but it certainly.
Well, they were, GM was not coming at this from a position of strength. They were also bankrupt. So Ford could have come in, but Ford didn't have enough cash, and they didn't want to take on any more debt. They already had a lot of debt, so they really couldn't do it. But GM, coming out of the same type of bankruptcy, could have done it. But again, because they were bankrupt, they also didn't have a position of strength. I don't know how Fiat had a position of strength, but somehow the genius, I would say evil genius, Sergio Marchionne, made the deal with the Obama administration, got Chrysler for essentially for free. They had to take on all their debt and all their obligations, but they got it essentially for free, and then they spun off later. But look, here we are.
Here we are. It's a foreign company.
Yeah, it just there's my little rant. I think a lot of jobs would have been saved, and
Well,
I think GM would be in a better position too.
They would be, and there would have been some sort of benefits with the scale, I would imagine, over trying to run a separate company. But a lot of these costs and the people trying to make ends meet or whatever they talk about with the line workers increasing their pay 20% over that many years, it's going to increase the car price. I mean, just guarantee that. So the UAW gets a win. All right. Yeah, they stood up for the little man. They stood up for the common person. They stood up for the blue collar worker. However, the blue collar worker still has to buy cars and trucks at the end of the day. CEOs typically don't take pay cuts. Investors in companies typically walk when the stock prices go down. It will impact their bottom line. Therefore, car prices are going up unless, here's a third parter. We go to the Teslification side of getting rid of the middle, and there you go.
Yeah. So I think that's going to cut their costs too. So yeah, Stephan, well, we're going to talk more about Teslification with time, Stephan, but now let's talk trauma surgeon safety.
All right, let's talk safety. How about this picture? So for you listeners, I just brought up a picture of a truck that has what's called the Carolina Squat. And it actually originated in California. This is where the truck is jacked up in the front and the rear end is
I'm just
low.
looking at the ball sack you stuck on there, Stephan.
Well, yeah, exactly. So listeners, anything I don't like, I show a picture and I attach a ball sack, a nut sack that you see hanging on the back of trucks. I'll adorn vehicles with that to show my disgust. But so this is actually originated. So you've seen these trucks driving around and SUVs, Suburbans that are jacked up way in the front and they're lowered in the back. It's actually called the Cali Squat, and it comes from the big truck and the off-road racing series, where for some reason in Baja vehicles this is advantageous, but this is absolutely lethal on our streets and highways. 3 states have made this illegal: North Carolina, South Carolina, and now Virginia. I saw one of these in Alabama, but the reason I bring up the Carolina squat is this kind of brought me this whole safety. Insurance Institute for Highway Safety came out with a recent report, and what they're looking at is vehicles and frontal surface area and height of drivers and lack of vision out the front and rear. So we know that vehicles have all gotten bigger, safer, and heavier in the last 10, 15 years. They just, to keep meeting all the safety standards, you'll find that the door that you used to be rubbing shoulders with now is 6 inches away from your shoulder. And the reason for that is safety to meet the side impacts. Well, this is all fine and great unless you have a vehicle mismatch, which is called vehicle aggressivity, where you don't want to be hit by a Carolina squat if you're in a Honda Fit. Okay, 2 Honda Fits versus each other is a fair match, but a Toyota Camry versus a Suburban is not a fair match. And a Suburban versus the Antichrist on 4 wheels, the Hummer 10,000 pounds, that's not a fair match. Okay. Well, think about this. If you're a pedicyclist, and no, Steve-O, that's not the guy driving the car that want to give you candy when you're in your story. So a pedicyclist is the word for pedestrians and cyclist combined. And I would throw into pedicyclist category also people in wheelchairs. So you think about now in urban settings, how do the vehicles interact with pedicyclists? So you can imagine, would you rather be hit if you're crossing the street and the guy doesn't see that the light's red and he blows through it, and would you rather get hit by a Honda Accord where you can roll across the hood up off the windshield, or would you rather get hit by a Suburban that is 42 inches high at the front, and it's basically like taking a battering ram and striking your full frontal force, so that instant amount of energy is transferred to you? So the IIHS took a look at this, and what they found is that as vehicles have changed, yes, they're becoming taller, they're becoming more upright, and they're showing a larger frontal surface. And in the last 30 years, U.S. passenger vehicles are typically 4 inches wider, they're 10 inches longer, 8 inches taller, and about 1,000 pounds heavier on average. And so for your listeners, you think about this. I want you, if you own a Suburban or you own a pickup truck, and what you want to do is sit in your pickup truck or your Suburban and then have somebody walk towards you, and you'll be able to see them, but then get one of the kids to walk towards you. You're going to find a point where they disappear because you can't see past the very front of your hood. And that's why we've seen a lot of increase in pedestrian deaths. And they actually found that the likelihood of fatality with these new taller vehicles is 45% greater for pedestrians than those that have hoods 30 inches less. I mean, that's a big deal.
Wow.
So it has to do with the angle of the hood as well as the front of the hood. And you can just think about it. It becomes a battering ram. And, so do the driveway test. And you can imagine in one of these vehicles with the Carolina squat, they're not going to see anything 12 to 14 feet in front of them. Okay. There's just no way. So, if you drive a Suburban, it is really impressive when even when I get in my F-150, the amount that I lose in front of me vision that I'm not seeing. I can't see anything basically on the ground about 10 to 12 feet in front of me. And it's just a matter of, it's pure geometry. So, we all knew this was going to be the truth with the way that the SUV crossovers, all these taller vehicles, the front of these vehicles changed. We knew this data was going to support this, but now we actually have the study from IHS that shows that yes, these larger vehicles are 45% more lethal to pedestrians and pedicyclists. So the take-home point is, if you drive one of these, go home and just have borrow your neighbor's could or take a box and just kind of get an idea of where you realize that all of a sudden you have no idea what's in front of you because you can't see that. So
I mean, you're saying 45% more lethal. You're not just talking about injuries. You're talking about death, nearly half again.
yes.
Stefan, why were they outlawed in those states? Is it because of the inability to see a certain number of feet? I mean, was that like the reason they hung them with being outlawed?
Well, imagine this. We actually had some politicians that did their damn job. Okay. Think
Okay.
about it.
That's
I mean,
rare.
no, think about it. You know,
Bear me that statement. I am shocked.
yes. So these things are, I mean, think about it. If you see one of these things, they don't belong on the roads. It's a modification of vehicle that is, in my mind, this is aggravated homicide. If you change one of your vehicles like this, you're going to lose in a court of law. I mean, there is nothing safe about this. It makes the vehicle unsafe. You can't see where you're going. And then if you do strike somebody, all the safety features that have been designed into vehicles just are gone. So it's aggravated homicide.
Couple of points being made there, and I know Steve, you want to weigh in because you were up on new car design, but you're saying it's 1,000 pounds heavier. You know, we've harped on the EVs of the world.
That doesn't even include an EV, which are actually about 3,200 pounds heavier.
Exactly, and I look at that vehicle. If you want to go back to that visual, you don't need to, but if you can pull it back up, and you would imagine that this is an average sized person taking this photo. Look how little the windshield looks. So the visibility slit
Yes.
that formerly a windshield is just hardly even visible. And these people are at the front 3/4. If they took that same photo walking in front of it, I don't think you could see any glass at all. And the other thing that I think is maybe worth mentioning, I don't know how much it weighed into these being outlawed, is the aerodynamics. When they're going down the road at 60, 70 miles an hour, how much less steering ability and ability to change directions do they have? Because now they're like an inverse spoiler. They're actually introducing lift. And introducing lift is what an aircraft wants to enjoy on a runway, but not an automobile going 80 down the interstate.
So I talked about, I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Stephan's description and summary is so good. I have nothing to add about that. Although the picture of that truck does remind me of a line from Corey Farley, who was an Auto Week columnist, and he said, sometimes you have an example where somebody spends more than the car is worth on the car just to make it worth even less.
Yeah. But going back, I talked about doing the driveway test. So I do want to tell one other thing to listeners. If you are purchasing a new SUV, a new crossover, and pretty much any new vehicle, there's a lot of advanced driver assistance systems you can choose from. But one I would definitely say automatically get is it's typically wrapped into some form of autonomous driving, but a lot of companies call it pedestrian detection, which is usually part of a pre-collision assist with automatic emergency braking. So this is the same, they typically tied in the same system that if the car stops in front of you and you're looking at your phone, your car's going to come to a stop automatically so you don't get a rear-end collision. And they typically tie that into pedestrian as well as cyclist. So if a pedestrian walks out in front of you and you don't hit the brakes, the car will automatically hit the brakes. So I think this is especially important to purchase this technology in SUVs. But if I had the option in a regular passenger vehicle, this is something I would get hands down. Because how many times has your wife or your passenger said, hit the brakes because you weren't paying, you almost rear-ended somebody? I mean, that's one of the most common collisions you're going to see in traffic and Lord knows you don't want to hit the front of one of these cars with all the bumpers and the LiDAR. It just becomes outrageously expensive to repair anything anymore.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. That was awesome. And we're going to move on to our collector cars segment. So, Stephan, what are we buying now?
So, we started with at 30,000 and we went, I don't know. So I went from a Sunbeam Tiger to a Mustang. And so now, man, we really hit the jackpot. We got kind of fired up when we saw this 62 GT go for millions that we'll never see. But we decided now that we're going to raise the bar, and we've got $100,000. But we've traded up and we've sold our vehicles. So really, it's just about a 30 grand jump, 35 grand jump to where we were, because we purchased wisely, sold wisely. So now we're making that big $100,000 leap, where this is probably more realistically where you're going to be when your kids are grown and gone to college, or you don't have any of your kids living at home anymore. So we got up to 100,000. So who wants to go first on this one?
No one, Adams, to go first.
All right, Adams, go first. All right.
These are always great. I always love your picks, Adams.
Well, I just said, but this is just a fun question. And I think it's a question, that most every car person sort of plays in their mind sometimes. What would I buy?
Every day I'm on Bring a Trailer doing this.
Spending theoretical dollars. Well, our guy has done pretty good to get up to this figure. And there was a time in the not too distant past that $100,000 was like, oh, they spent $100,000 on a car. Well, now it's relatively commonplace to hear of $100,000 cars.
Well, what's the new Escalade cost, Steve-O?
Over 100.
There you go.
Unless you get a totally strip, but it's over 100. Stefan, you can get a pickup for $100,000. A half ton.
My XLT Ford XLT 150 with cloth interior is $65,000 today. I paid 30 for mine. 65 grand for a pickup with cloth interior.
And that's not a collector car, but we got a collector car here. So let's hear it, because this is more fun than a new car.
Yes.
Well, if I'm looking, because I'm a cheapskate, if I'm looking at an investment side, and I was mentioning to Steve earlier on the call that my wife would not have put up with me sort of trading in and out of cars for the last 38-ish years, 39 years, if I'd lost on every one. I'm not saying that I go into it with the mindset that I have to make, but a break even or a win is really the only way I'm going to be able to sustain this. So I kind of have that mentality going in, and I've had many losses. I mean, we could spend several podcasts on the ones I've lost money on. However, going in with that mindset, if I had 100 grand to spend on a collector car, I would end up buying 2 BMW i8s.
What?
What?
Whoa.
That is a future win we are looking at.
Yes, you're right. It's one of our dark horse picks. It is a win-win.
It is truly a win. I think the styling is going to catch up with people's taste. They are a little weird, and we don't need to go into that because that's not my real pick. I'm going to play more in the spirit of it. But I do believe that is a win in the future. So I would drive the wheels off one of them, and the one at like, I don't know, 8,000 or 7,000 miles. I would mothball that thing, and it would pay for both of them eventually. But my real life pick.
Before you move on, I think you're right, but I think one of the reasons this car was held back when it was new, and I think this will hold it back ultimately a little bit in the future. It's futuristic. It has scissor doors. It is beautiful, and it's obviously a sports car, but it's a hybrid, and the engine part of it, the internal combustion part, is a mini 3-cylinder engine. Ugh.
I know, Steve, and I don't disagree with that, because just to even tell people, oh, I have a 3-cylinder engine, just makes me want to put a bullet in this car. But I think that will become less of a negative impact in the future. I feel like there'll be, I think the age of the gearhead who really cared about that type of spec is going to be aging out. I hate to say, I think that even the current lust for 6-speed manual transmissions is going to age out, and I believe the inverse investment return will apply.
Just like the 57 Chevy, it'll be gone one day. Who cares?
Yeah. I agree.
Goner. So in light of that, and it would be fun to own one of these if I was going to spend 100 grand on one car. Can't believe I'm saying this. There it is, the beautiful Porsche 993, which was the last of the air-cooled cars. That's a European car with European wheels that we never got over here. I didn't even notice that when I picked that photo. But made from 95 to 98, it's got the wonderful horizontally opposed 3.6 with 282 horsepower, naturally aspirated in this car. I would pick an unusual color. This particular one is turquoise. This is
that is a gorgeous. That's a really beautiful color, man. I like that color.
And and that's just a C2. And for those of you out there who go, no, you got to have an S, you got to have an S. Yeah, well, the S's are now well up over our theoretical price range. In addition, the S's of this era offered 0 additional horsepower. So
what? Wait a minute. You pay this typical Porsche, you pay more for less or the same?
It's the same exact motor, same exact everything. However, the S has 2.2 inches, I think, of total extra width in the rear, plus the front and rear fascia are better looking. I'll concede that. It's got side skirts and it has turbo brakes and suspension. So you do get some hardware frills for your S, but Lordy, you're going to pay 30, 40 grand more for that. Probably 30 grand more for that. So at this price point, I would pick the normal C2. If I had any money left over, I would get the turbo wheels, the 18-inch wheels, which really make it stand out because the 17-inch C2 wheels are just not that good looking. And you can even put the turbo front end, the C2S front end on it for just maybe $1,000 and a little bit more painted. And that's where I'd go with my 100 grand, and I would have a reliable car that's modern enough to keep up with fast traffic, fun enough because it's going to have the G50. That's the Getrag
transmission manual.
Thank you. The 6-speed. That word just left me. The 6-speed, and it's just going to be the last of an era. And it's a very reliable car. It's a very approachable car. The first thing I do is drop the motor, get everything sealed on it because it's going to drip on your dang driveway, and just get it sealed, plug it back in, and enjoy my car.
Dude, great pick. And I tell the listeners, you got to look at this. This is tell the listeners again what color this is. It is a fabulous, fabulous blue.
This is what they just called turquoise in the day.
Okay.
Steve, you may know if it had a more exotic name, but that's all I could find for it.
I've never seen that color before. I at some point am going to get an air-cooled 911. I've got a new one that's a daily driver, 992, 2.5 years old. That's just my driver, and I love it. But as a car to drive on the weekends, someday I'm going to have an air-cooled. I don't know if it's going to be. We'll see. It'll be some kind of air-cooled. This was the best. This was the last. It was the best. It's a beautiful Tony Hatter design, and I just think it's so good looking. Great choice.
Well, and last point before we move on. I mean, people would say, "Hey, wait a minute! Didn't you just get a car?" And yes, I did. Sort of showed my hand on that. However, I will just go ahead and admit to the listeners and the viewers, this is the car I was mostly looking for. I probably spent 85% of my time looking at 993s, and it just so happened that the blue car behind me came up, and it was, very.
Tell those that can't see that car what car you got behind you.
A Ferrari 360 in Nart blue, not terribly different from this, not as much green in it, but a 6-speed. So the fact that it's a Modena 6-speed makes it, a little bit more attractive to me. But honestly, if the right 993 had showed up even a day before, that's what would be behind me right now.
I'd have to, if I had to pick between the Ferrari and the 993, it'd be 993 all day long.
Now, you don't have to get insulting about it.
Well, we'll see how long that Ferrari lasts behind you. If it lasts longer than the S2000.
You picked the S2000s
over and under. Yes.
Day.
Yeah. All right, Steve-O, you're up. What you got for us?
So I had a 240Z, and then I had a Barracuda Resto mod. So I felt like I had an original Japanese car that harkened back to my childhood. And then I had a Resto mod Barracuda that I could drive. You get an original CUDA. Those are valuable cars. You don't want to drive them too much. So I got the Resto mod, and I wanted something different. So this is different. This is a 21.
You made that qualification pretty clearly.
Yeah, a 21 window 1966 Volkswagen bus. But this is a Resto mod. I thought of the word scotch. Scotch. It's got a scotch more power. This has an 8.3 liter Cadillac V8, so it's got a scotch more power. But it's $99,000. Buy it now.
Oh, there it is. So
Yeah.
what this engine? So basically, it's two seats up front with an engine in the
Right.
back.
Yes.
Business up front, party in the back.
Yeah.
This is
Oh my
you
god!
you will win every Cars and Coffee. You will get all kinds of attention, and it looks cool. I've always liked the Volkswagen bus, but this one, I don't like it. I love it.
Oh, dude,
Like that.
how'd you even find this thing? Oh my god, this is
I was
fabulous.
I searched for 1966 Volkswagen bus because that's what I wanted. And I thought I'd get something like an Andrew Clark mobile where it's got like a Porsche engine or a, more power. It needs more power. I did not anticipate this.
You know what's crazy, and listeners, if you're not looking at this, it is. I actually read the description. It's 6 inches wider than the norm. So imagine that somebody has to.
Well, just at the rear.
Oh, only at the rear. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, I thought they zippered the whole thing, but the 6 inches are made up in these wonderful looking side flank air intakes, which that 500 cubic inch motor sorely needs. And it's widened in the rear, and it just looks absolutely outstanding. That it has the identical profile to a loaf of bread. Power it's got, you'll be smiling the entire time you're driving it.
Yeah.
Dude, this is like the greatest pick ever, man.
a skosh more power. So there you go. All right.
And listeners, this is awesome two-tone paint. It's red on the bottom, black on top where the windows are. Just perfect. That thing is just way cool. I thought I had a cool pick, but Steve-O, you took it there.
There's nothing about it I don't love. So what's yours, Stefan?
All right, so here's my pick.
Of course, a Cobra.
So in our car collection, I haven't had a Cobra yet, and I already made the mistake of owning a 427 SC Cobra. So listeners, that's a 1965 Cobra Gumball Rally. The side pipes on the, coming out the side of the car that burn your legs, burn your passengers' legs, burn everybody's legs that get in and out. And, some people may call this a penile extension of a vehicle, which I can kind of understand. But this car came up, and, we had our buddy Bobby Crumpley on the show. He had the highest selling ERA that sold on 427, sold for 110 a couple of months ago. This is a twin Paxton supercharged ERA. So this is a Cobra that's got a big block, which is called an FE in the Ford world, that has been stroked to 454 cubic inches and has two period correct. So this is the same superchargers you could get back in the day. It's got two superchargers on this motor. And they estimated a conservative 650, 670 horsepower in a car that weighs 2,400 pounds.
Wow.
And I'm going to roll up the picture here of the engine. And this engine is absolutely just gorgeous. What's crazy is, I think it kind of defines the market where we are now in the Cobra, that when people are buying a Cobra replica, they're just buying a Cobra. They just want the look. They'll put a small block in it. They don't care. They'll put a brand new crate motor. They don't care. But I think for those of us over 50, maybe even 55, and we're looking at Cobras, you want to be period correct, but it's okay to modernize it a little bit. But the replicas are replicas. There's a shit ton of them out there, but this is going to be the talk of any Cobra replicas that get together. When you man up in this thing, everybody's going to close their hood and they're going to tuck it back in, and they're going to be embarrassed because this is just a badass Cobra, and I cannot believe that it sold for $92,000 on ERA 2 days ago. I mean, yesterday. Actually, yeah, I couldn't believe it.
I would imagine, and I'm just throwing this out there, Steph, you probably know exactly, that's almost got to be a $40,000 motor.
So when so I am currently rebuilding an FE motor, which is, listeners, that's a 1965 to 1970 era motor that you rebuild. and the FEs were not real popular like the Chevys big blocks and the Chevy small blocks, so parts were more expensive, and everybody typically puts new internals in it. So you turn it to a stroker. I mean, I'm putting an 8 stack, which is 8 individual carburetors that are fuel injected on my car. That's a big expense. But the rebuild of a stock FE, I mean, like just to make it look good, period correct. I mean, your entry price is about $30K.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
25 to 30K just on the motor.
So I was way light on that.
This motor here, I would tell you that this is with those packs and superchargers. No, this was built by Cobra Automotive. I mean, this is like having your car, the engine built by like one of the gurus, the gods of Ford FE fandom. I mean, this has got to be a $65,000 motor. And you can't even step into an ERA without a motor for right now, probably less than 50,000 without even a motor or paint job. Okay. So, I mean, in my mind, this all day long was probably about $130,000 car, and it sold for 92.
Wow.
And I talked to Bobby Crumpley, we've had on the show before, and yeah, he said he basically said he could not reach down and find a pair to ever list a car and bring a trailer without a reserve. And
yeah.
And this car was listed no reserve, which I was like, dude. And about 25 to 30% of cars right now on Bring a Trailer aren't making reserve.
That has really, in the past probably 6, 8, 10 months, that has really accelerated the number of cars not meeting it. But wow, there you go. There's the payoff of a no reserve right there.
Yeah,
and the dude stole this car.
The market is softening for new cars, and it's softening for used cars, and it's softening for collector cars. Yep. This is I wouldn't say to anybody buy a car now, but I would say 6 months, 12 months, I think it's going to be a great time to buy a car. It's really moving. Don't you think, Adams?
I absolutely do. I mean, I would be concerned about financing a new car now, because I feel like you'll be upside down as soon as you pull out of the driveway, but possibly buying a collector car now, if you have the cash and do not need to borrow, I think it's probably a decent time to do that. There's some opportunities out there for sure. Case in point, that one. And by the way, I'd like to repick mine.
What's your pick?
I mean, I didn't realize 500 horsepower minimum was the entry fee. I feel like the weakling of the group only picking a 993.
What I honestly, I assumed that what you wanted to do is take your 993 and put an 8-liter Cadillac V8 into it. Isn't that what you wanted to do?
Why not? You took the right out of my head.
All right. Well, we are out of time. So that was fun, and happy Thanksgiving. But Stephan, close us out.
Hey, like, listen, subscribe, hit that bell, tell your friends about us, leave comments, send us an email, and have a fabulous Thanksgiving. And we'll see you guys next week.